Asterisk warning, this is a fanfiction, so this is definitely not what would actually happen, but it's my headcanon, and you clicked on the video, so you have to deal with it. This is also written by me, so any lore questions can be asked and I will try to give you an answer. Also, this isn't on the fanfiction website, so yeah. Asterisk, we start off with Overhaul meeting the League of Villains along with Deku, the newest member. While most of the group begins to talk crap about Overhaul, Deku stays silent, flinching slightly when hearing the name All for 1 Foot, eventually leading to Overhaul challenging Shigaraki, Deku agreeing with Overhaul's ideas, but of course he can't leave the League of Villains or else he wouldn't be there in the first place. Then seeing his ally being killed with one touch, with then the blowing up of Compress, Deku would charge up blasters about to blast them, but before he could the battle ends, then everyone begins to want to kill Overhaul with Deku butting in saying it's too dangerous. Eventually hero work study begins with Aizawa sending Deku a message saying that he would be allowed to do work studies. Although with the lack of attendance most won't accept him if he doesn't go to school. Deku would tell Shigaraki about this opportunity, but he would reject it saying, too much freedom, besides you're a villain now kid. However, he then gets another message saying, Endeavor the #1 hero has sent you a request, but in exchange you have to start going to class. Shigaraki begins to decline that idea, but all of a sudden a voice pings their heads, let him Shigaraki. This will allow Deku to find the weaknesses of the greatest heroes, and besides we got that license for a reason. With a cackle, Shigaraki restates that you have to do villain work. With that Deku goes back to school and instantly everyone in class 1A goes nuts, with Aizawa saying you have a lot to make up, you accept the offer huh? Makes sense, you're here to use your new quirks. This perks everyone's ears up, where Deku begins to explain, unfortunately I was given this power by All for One, so for now until I can get rid of it, while whispering, and him from my head, then he continues to speak at full volume, I'm going to have to use the quirks for the best. Now for the sake of the class's safety, I have been given permission to say my 4 quirks, so I can update my hero profile. My first quirk, Strength Enhancement, a quirk similar to All Might's in terms for power. My second quirk and by far the most dangerous and one of the 2 reasons I couldn't come here for a while, a Explosion quirk, but unlike Bakugo's it explodes me, causing anyone near me to die. My third quirk, Regeneration, will cause me to survive and take much more damage, and finally my fourth quirk, Pyrokinesis, is the quirk I would have had if I had been given a quirk at birth, activated when I got all my other quirks. As a result it is the quirk I will use the most and the reason I wanted to meet Endeavor. I will become a hero again, and I will do what I can to save people. The whole class is silent after this, even Bakugo is so, no one interacts with Deku, not even Uraraka. After school that day, Deku meets with Endeavor for his work studies, with Endeavor saying, as a vigilante, you already get the idea of saving people and how, so right now we need you to work on your quirks. Let's start off with what you can and can't do. Deku then describes his quirks. My strength quirk is self-explanatory, it increases my physical power, but also my quirk's power, distance, and control. If used too much it damages my body. My explosion quirk is currently uncontrollable and so far it has only been used once by All for One's influence to show me my quirks. My regeneration quirk fixes my limbs, however, so my limit isn't that small for physical strength. It also fixes my body after exploding so he can continue torturing me with my life. And finally the quirk you're most interested in, Pyrokinesis. While I can't use it to create fire, I can control all kinds of fire, including the fire on you Endeavor. As Deku literally turns off Endeavor's fire, before turning it back on again, I can also control anything on fire, as Deku picks up a blank piece of paper off the desk near him, and lights it on fire before levitating to Endeavor. Endeavor starts saying, don't do that ever again, anyways so All for One let you be here, which means he wants something here, but my job is to train you in the field, so let's go. As Endeavor begins to fly with fire, by jumping out the window. Deku immediately follows him, activating his kinetic gauntlets and levitating himself using pyrokinesis, mimicking Endeavor's style. We cut to Shigaraki meeting with Overhaul with Deku, as it was conveniently on his only day off, and Deku learns about the quirk Disabler Bullet. Deku is instantly intrigued, as he thought this might be the way to disable the voice of All for One. We cut to the next day where Deku meets the other members of the Endeavor Agency like Burnin, where Deku gets a new idea for his pyrokinesis. Activating his gauntlets, he blasts them and bending them to the top of his head, and he can use the fire freely. Like extra storage that he could add, although he can only keep the fire up there for a short period of time. He also starts to attack members of the Overhaul Agency before he gets a ping in his head. Don't do that, Midoryia. That's Shigaraki's job. But Deku continues to attack, thinking, maybe if he activates my explosion quirk, I can learn to control it. But then All for One says, I know what you're planning, but you forget that's not the only pawn I have. What about your mother, Midoryia? But then Deku says aloud, stopping in his tracks, realizing mentally, saying, hang on a second, how do you have any power over her? You're in prison. Hell, do you even know where she is? All for One responds angrily, of course I do, she's at the bnha. But before he finishes he realizes he said too much. Deku shouts, the bar, and he immediately leaves his work study, heading straight there at tremendous speeds using his strength quirk. Deku then begins to explode, however Deku says, no, not yet, as he begins to activate pyrokinesis, which starts to prevent the outburst a little more than his original explosion. Eventually making it there, at the rubble, Deku realizes it must be underground as there is nothing else there, and breaks through the floor in one punch, and there he sees his mother, chained up to a wall. Mom! Deku shouts, breaking the chains, and immediately heads to the hospital, dropping her off saying, please save her, she is in trouble, before jumping way above the hospital, finally letting himself explode, causing very minor damage to his surroundings, knocking himself out. From there Deku wakes up and tells Endeavor about what happened and why he is in the state he is in now. And then he says if he can stop the explosions, he could finally do what he truly wants again. Deku checks in with Shigaraki again, and learns that Operation Destroy Overhaul is in the cards. From there Deku meets with Aizawa and tells him about Overhaul. Aizawa asks, why are you telling me this? But before Deku could start explaining, the League will be there. He starts to explode again. Deku focuses his mind on keeping himself stable, and Deku explains that the League will be there, and that they will be working against Overhaul and on the side of the heroes. Before Aizawa could question Deku, Deku jumps out of the school, and jumps far up in the air, allowing himself to explode again. When Deku wakes up, Aizawa asks, so you're going to be there, huh? So do you know anything else about Overhaul? Deku responds, yes, his quirk can instantly kill someone. He has quirk erasing bullets, and he hates us in particular. Aizawa knew about the bullets and got the part of hating them, but did not expect the Oko info. Aizawa asks, like slow death or dash, but before he could finish his Deku interrupts saying, instant. With that the day arrives of the raid. Aizawa, while not wanting Class 1A to participate, knowing the League will be on their sides, allowed in his mind to allow them to go. Deku along with Toga and Twice are both stationed inside the base. Eventually coming across the gang where Deku betrays Toga and Twice, apprehending them, but he couldn't save Pop Lock. After knocking out Toga, Midoryia went along with Aizawa, before he starts to explode with All for One queuing and saying, don't hurt your allies, but before he can, Midoryia uses his pyrokinesis and sucks it back in, and Deku replies saying, not gonna work, you have no control me anymore, before all of a sudden being sucked into the ground. We have a flashback of Deku meeting Overhaul, greeting him saying, I'm here for the sake of All for One, I have 4 quirks, the main of which being fire manipulation, the rest power-up said quirk. Deku thinks, I'm technically not lying, but he can't know everything. Before being asked if Shigaraki asked to betray them, Deku blurts out no, he is told he has to stay inside, with the exception of Deku, as he has become a local celebrity for being a part of the Endeavor Agency, and it would be suspicious if Deku left. We cut back to the future with Deku noticing the ground manipulation villain, and creates a blast of fire using his gauntlets, blasting a beam directly through the hole, with Aizawa disabling the villain's quirk. Deku then meets Nighteye, when he is about to attack Deku, but Aizawa intervenes saying, he's with us, before continuing with the group. We cut to the many fights of lemillion, all happening the same, but something is different about the hero. For some reason he glows, and as Eri is about to be shot, when he blocks the bullet, he loses the ability to go through walls, his first quirk, but it is revealed here that he is the successor for OFA. As he jumps directly back to Overhaul, attempting to punch him, breaking his arms, along with Overhaul's, however Overhaul regenerates his arms, Lemillion continues to fight, but his body begins to dwindle as similar to Deku of the original he uses 100% too much. Before Overhaul is able to kill Lemillion, however Deku breaks through the wall with his strength quirk, accidentally breaking his gauntlets doing so. Deku thinks, crap, my gauntlets, I have been trying a replacement, but I'm not sure if they will work. Deku then punches Overhaul, with a 45% punch as Deku needs to be safe, to not hurt anyone around him. Aizawa is then pierced by Krieto, who originally disabled Overhaul's quirk. Deku then realizes Overhaul's quirk is activated and jumped away, before jumping up, activating his explosion quirk, turning it into a massive beam before it hits, however Overhaul fuses with his servants and blocks it. Deku then realizes that he is alone against Shigaraki. Deku realizes that Lemillion lost his original quirk. As Overhaul attempts to attack Lemillion, Deku interferes with a full power punch, regeneration begins to kick in, Nighteye then tags in with Deku, saving Lemillion and Eri. Deku then sees Nighteye is injured beyond belief. Deku then jumps in, Deku then puts 100% throughout his entire body, every kick on the ground causes an earthquake. Deku then jumps, punching Overhaul in the face, before getting stabbed by a rock. Deku inserts his body as it regenerates slowly, too slowly. Deku realizes his entire body can't handle it. Eri returns to Overhaul. Deku tells Eri to flee. Deku tells Eri to look at him as his regeneration completes, saying it will be okay. But Eri attempts to come back anyway. Overhaul tells Deku, it's not meant to be. Deku then says, I won't let you win. Before many other heroes enter, Deku then thinks this fight is the first for many things, before activating not just his strength quirk, but also his explosion quirk to blast himself upward when Eri clings onto Deku, activating her quirk. Deku then proceeds to activate all 4 of his quirks at the same time as Deku's hair turns orange, and his arms form a large flame gauntlet, as Deku attempts to punch Overhaul but ends up way beyond where he intended. Deku realizes he can use all his quirks without detriment with both Eri's quirk and regeneration. Deku begins to transform entirely, not just his hands, as he glows orange with the exception of where he holding Eri. Deku then tells Eri to hop on his back, as Deku fully powers up, as he jumps toward Shigaraki, moving faster than sound. Deku gets below the monster, punching him from below, blasting Shigaraki upward. Deku then puts all of his flames, burning Shigaraki alive. Before using his explosion quirk to resurface more fire, as Deku then blasts himself similar to Bakugo toward Overhaul, effectively allowing him to fly, before destroying the arms of Shigaraki. Deku then, with 100% in strength, explosion, and pyrokinesis, punches Shigaraki, causing a massive sandstorm, leaving Shigaraki on the ground holding onto a small strand of life, barely alive. While Deku stands there victorious, Eri's quirk then erases Overhaul's quirk temporarily, while Deku is constantly barraged by Eri, but then Aizawa disables Eri's quirk. The whole operation being a success, Nighteye immediately takes interest in Midoryia. While he never met this version, Nighteye tells the young boy, you changed your future, kid, impressive. After the battle ends, Deku gets a ping on his costume made by the villains, with Shigaraki coming through asking, so you broke through, huh? About time. I'm going to enjoy killing you when we fight for real. Deku says yes before tossing off the sweatshirt he was wearing, throwing it into a garbage can. Deku then is mentioned several times by many heroes, as the hero who shouldn't have been there, but we wouldn't have won without him. Deku then really meets Nighteye for the first time walking into the room. I don't think this is a good time to have a real conversation, Nighteye. Why did you want to talk to me? Nighteye responds, you changed the future, your thoughts were so powerful, you changed me. Before Mirio enters the room, where they have their heart-to-heart. With that, Nighteye dies. Deku notices the operation was considered a failure. Aizawa asks Deku, are you finally free? Deku responds, yes, I'm ready to officially become normal again. Before Deku visits Mirio, where Deku asks, so you have one for all, right? Don't worry, I know how it works, I had it temporarily once too. Mirio pauses and says, yeah, guess it's a good thing I was hit, I could still do what I can, and trust me, I know how you got yours too. All Might told me, those quirks are gifts, use them. Deku asks, when do you think you'll come back? Mirio responds, soon, see you there. Izuku. Deku then sees Kirishima being a lot more warm, almost like a heavy burden was taken off the boy's shoulders. Deku and the rest of gang are congratulated for surviving. Deku then speaks up saying, guys, I want to say something, I haven't been anywhere near myself, because of the villain. All for one, he kidnapped my mother, and forced a quirk that would make me explode if I ever disobeyed him, but now I'm finally free and can control it, so I might be a little different as I can finally be myself. With that, everyone begins to have a small party. Deku, when he goes to his room, goes down like a rock after reflecting on the last months, forced to work with the League, far away from everyone else. From his goal, Deku could finally do what he always wanted, to be a hero. But as he dreams, he remembers one of his crimes with the League. Deku sees a burning man. Deku sees himself holding his hand out crying, saying, I'm so sorry, I can't control myself, as the man falls down from the pain. Deku thinks, I don't remember this, before All for One in his dream kicks in saying, you're a villain, you always will be. Deku wakes up realizing it's time for him to get up anyways, thinking, so that's how he is going to try now, with no physical control, he is going to try mental. Well, good luck All for One, nothing can be worse than what you put me through. With that, classes for Deku starts to begin again. On the most difficult quizzes Deku is able to breeze by easily, and as Deku says he is ready for math before Ioma butts in. Soon Deku sees Ioma spying on him, with a bunch of cheese saying, I know, with Deku wondering know what. Before the next day begins, Deku learns about ultimate moves as he missed so many days, he never worked on them. Deku however knows exactly to work on for an ultimate move, as Deku begins to activate 3 quirks at the same time, creating massive fire gauntlets along with his strength quirk, but before he can train with them he is interrupted by Ioma, and how his quirk doesn't work with his body, and realizes that while Deku has the same problem, the regeneration quirk that was only meant to keep him alive while he explodes also allows his other quirks to thrive. Deku agrees, and wonders this effect is only for people who were given a quirk, as Deku asks, Ioma, were you given your quirk? Ioma flinches, and before he responds Deku says, your reaction says enough, I won't tell, and hey, All for One has no control over you, before walking away leaving Ioma speechless, with them becoming friends. Deku then begins to work on mending his many relationships that he missed from the many months he was gone, and Deku realizes that the sports festival would be a great time for it. Deku then sees Mina dancing in class when Deku wonders if he could still do that from when he was quirkless, and Deku then copies Mina's movements exactly, with everyone impressed how he is able to do those movements, as far as they were aware that it was his first time doing so. With that, the idea for the sports festivals began, landing a rave. Deku and Mirio then visit Eri, as Eri says she wants Deku to visit. Deku introduces himself to the young girl, with him and Mirio comforting her. Deku then learns she has never smiled, with Deku realizing he hasn't smiled a lot either, ever since that day, where he was told he couldn't be a hero, and he needs to work on that, just like Eri. For both of them, Deku realizes the sports festival would be great for both of them. After that, Deku begins to think about making a new hero costume, one accustomed to his new quirks, or rather control over them, creating a dark green suit with orange highlights, getting inspiration from his vigilante suit and his villain suit, one that could be worn other a uniform, or other clothes. The suit is fireproof. Deku decided to add no gadgets to the model in order for him to force himself to use his quirks to get better. He got the idea from most heroes like Endeavor, who uses his fire to get around instead of hooks or something along those lines, although Deku does plan on adding certain support items in the future. Deku then makes up classes from not just his work study but also his weeks away. Deku then is revealed to be on the dance team, as he could copy dance moves instantly. Deku then meets with All Might, where they discuss Mirio and One for All, where Deku then states an idea he had. All for One, he can use quirks he stole, right? could Mirio theoretically use quirks from the previous users of One for All? When transferring a quirk, the other should go too, right? It's just what I witnessed in the little time I was with All for One, so I don't know if it's possible, but that would help Mirio a great deal, but that's not what I'm here for. I'm here for strength advice. You see, my quirks are great, but I haven't used my strength quirk as much as I could. After all, the quirk is literally perfect for me, and I was wondering, are there any techniques I should try to make myself better with that quirk? All Might tells Deku to go outside with him and to power up the quirk, as much as he can, and attack. All of a sudden Deku can use wind pressure, just like All Might. All Might says, that's a new element you can use. You see, there are a lot of flame-based quirks, and that's what the news knows you for, so when you are in a bind, a whole new element that you don't have to activate 2 quirks to use would be extremely useful. Oh, and as what for you said for Mirio, we will try it. With that their session ends. Deku then sees Eri and Togata again, where Deku tags along with them, meets Monoma again where Deku is dumbfounded by his stupid Monoma sounds, he can't say anything. Deku learns about the beauty pageant and learns about the support course student Mimamai, one which Deku remembers seeing from back when he was in the course, and he wonders, really she won every year, didn't look special to me. Deku realizes this is his actual first time meeting the big 3 and they introduce themselves to him and him back to them. Deku then revisits the support course, seeing everyone there and seeing Hatsune again, where Deku gets the idea for adding gloves to control wind pressure. They don't need to be bulky, but they still need to handle attacks and fireproof, so on his own time whenever not performing, he began to work on them having the same color scheme as his suit. Deku then talks with Principal Nizu and ends the tour. Deku is then fired from the dance team, added to the special effects team, as Deku has a strength quirk. Deku then does both teams. All Might meet with Deku again, where Deku is finally able to get the hang of the air pressure with his gloves. All Might then tell Deku about how he was right and how Mirio was able to use his mentor's quirk, float, as it was kind of similar to permeation. Deku then learns about Gentle Criminal. Deku remembers the guy from when he was a villain. He was pretty strong, creating air barriers. Deku then does his final practice, where Deku learns about the broken rope. Deku then decides to buy a new rope for everyone. With that Deku heads to the store, accidentally running into the criminal, where Deku instantly recognizes the voice and asks, Gentle. Gentle nervously says, what, oh it's you, the hell spawn of All for One, or at least one of them. Instantly they both get into battle stance. Deku throws off his jacket revealing the suit underneath, powering up his hands to create fire gauntlets, leaping at Gentle, but it costs too much energy and Deku doesn't even realize the barrier in front of him. Deku then realizes using multiple quirks would be too much as his regeneration needs rest time. Deku decides to stick with his strength quirk, jumping back toward Gentle, and then using his explosion quirk like Bakugo he blasts himself at high speed toward Gentle, hitting him in the back. Without a lot of control, Deku still can't fly well. Deku realizes it might be a good idea to stick with what he has been practicing, instead using his fingers to blast air pressure toward the criminal. Deku then reaches the construction yard, where Gentle and Deku talk, where Gentle calls Deku a League of Villain Scum, pissing off Deku where he says, not by choice you son of a bi dash, but before he can finish, Gentle uses elasticity to move around at high speeds. Deku decides to use the pussycat style he learned from Season 3 to move around at high speeds like Gentle, but he can't quite keep up. Deku learns Gentle can blast air back toward Gentle, so Deku quickly swap toward fire, but before he can fire, Gentle makes a beam get released, where Deku is forced to catch a beam, where Deku immediately after chucks the beam toward Gentle, as he then decides to put both of his fingers behind himself, blasting himself toward Gentle, grabbing Gentle midair. Then blasting himself with Gentle toward the ground, at high speeds, with a hard landing. Gentle is pretty much downed, then Labrava is pretty much forced to activate her quirk. Deku then is about to knock out Gentle, but because of Labrava's quirk Gentle blasts Deku upward. Gentle then jumps above him and kicks him to the ground, leading to Deku being in a fist-to-fist match with Deku, where Deku is able to activate his fire gauntlets which he finally named the Fists of Hell. The match ends up with each of them taking consecutive hits against each other, in the face, stomach, eventually leading to them also going on top of trees. Deku gets to the point of a speed where he can barely be seen, eventually leading to one big attack. A 75% strength, pyrokinesis, explosion, combo fist. The attack ended up knocking out the criminal. Deku looks at his arm which is damaged from the punch, saying to himself it will heal before the dance. Deku then calls over the heroes in the forest, with Gentle turning himself in. Deku is then able to get his stuff back from the store, and do the dance just like the original timeline. Moving everyone including Eri. With that Deku celebrates the rest of the day, giving Eri a candy apple. Deku then learns Eri is going to live at U. A. Before seeing the wild pussy cats again with them apologizing to Deku, and Koda seeing Deku again also saying, "Sorry, I didn't know what would happen, I will get stronger for both us." Deku says, "No, I'm sorry for not being able to defeat Muscular on my own." Then Deku learns about All for One's offer to give Search back, and they wanted to talk to Deku about how it works. Deku then learns about the Japan Billboard chart. Deku asks about that, and he realizes that technically he could be on there as he does have a big history with vigilantism, and his hero career. Deku looks at the list as a whole, and he sees his name, Deku, spot number 500, being the only kid in class on said list. Deku is obviously surprised as he technically doesn't even have a full license yet, but no one else knows about it as no one really looks at any of the other numbers other than the top 10. Endeavor is then attacked by a nomu just like the original timeline. When defeating the nomu, he says, "You may have multiple quirks, but you can't use them nearly as well as one of my students, you are truly a bad villain," before defeating the nomu. With that the season ends. If you liked this video, be sure to like, comment and subscribe for like 2 movies and season 5, oh no.